My son looked me straight in the eyes and said, "Just die. I don't give a shit." And I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just nodded, because he had no idea I'd been preparing to walk away for months. That moment, it wasn't a breakdown. It was closure. And here's the part no one tells you. Sometimes, the strongest thing a mother can do is leave. My name is Rose. I'm 68 years old, and for most of my life, I believed being a mother meant giving without limits. I raised my son Jacob alone since he was 6. His father passed away in a car accident just weeks before Jacob started first grade. I remember holding his little hand at the funeral, promising him, "No matter what, Mommy's not going anywhere." And I didn't. Not through the years of double shifts, skipped meals, and birthdays I celebrated on the bus ride home from work. I cleaned houses in the mornings and shelved books at the town library in the evenings. I stitched his Halloween costumes by hand. I sold my engagement ring to pay for his first laptop. He never knew. I didn't want him to. He was a good boy back then. Quiet, smart, always drawing plans for things he wanted to build. I used to tell people, "My Jacob's gonna be something big one day." And I meant it, even when he flunked out of college. Even when he said he needed space and moved back home, only to stay 5 years straight. I still cooked his meals, folded his laundry, gave him the bigger bedroom. I told myself, he's just figuring things out. Because that's what mothers do, right? We wait. We believe. We keep pouring even when the cup is cracked. The truth? I didn't mind giving. What broke me was realizing he stopped seeing it as love and started seeing it as expected. There's something quiet that shifts in your heart when your child stops saying thank you and starts asking, "Why haven't you done more?" But I kept on. I clipped coupons. I kept that one savings account barely breathing. I named it Jacob's Restart Fund. I thought maybe one day he'd get back on his feet. Maybe he'd remember who helped keep him standing. But what I didn't know back then was that sometimes the more you give, the less they see you. And I was about to find out just how invisible I'd become. Before I keep going, let me ask you something. Have you ever looked into your child's eyes and realized they didn't see you anymore? Not as a mother, not even as a person, just a resource. If you've felt that, drop a in the comments, because I promise you, I know how that silence feels. It started with a letter. Plain white envelope, bank logo in the corner. I almost tossed it, thought it was a statement. But inside was a notice. A $12,000 loan. In my name. Approved. Active. Already overdue. I sat on the couch, heart pounding. I hadn't taken out any loan, but Jacob had. He'd used my information, full name, address, social security number, from an old tax form he once borrowed to scan for a job. I didn't think twice. He was my son. So I walked to his room. He was at his desk, headset on, yelling into some live stream like he was hosting a TED Talk. I waited. Quiet. Just watched him. This grown man I'd once carried through fevers and schoolyard fights, now pacing barefoot, shouting about passive income and scaling funnels. When he finally noticed me, he pulled one earbud off and said, "What?" I showed him the letter. He barely blinked. "Oh, that? Yeah, I needed startup capital. Don't worry, Mom. I've got it under control." I asked, "In my name?" He said, "You weren't using it, and besides, your credit's good. That's what family's for." I didn't yell. I didn't even raise my voice. I just stood there, stunned. That's when he stood up, face tight, voice sharp, and hissed, "You've been holding me back my whole life. Always hovering, always doubting. You know what? Just die. I don't give a shit." My heart didn't break. It paused. like it needed time to catch up to what he just said. And then I nodded, not because I agreed, because in that moment, I understood. He had already erased me. He'd rewritten me as a burden, a nag, a block in his path, and no matter what I said, he wouldn't hear me. So I walked out, not with anger, not with sadness, just a quiet decision that I'd been rehearsing for months. He thought that line was the end. What he didn't know, it was my beginning. The night I left, I didn't slam the door. I didn't pack a suitcase. I didn't even turn off the hallway light. I just walked out. Keys, ID, purse. That was it. The quietest exit of my life. And somehow, the heaviest. I stayed at my old friend June's place for the first few nights. She's the kind of woman who doesn't ask questions until you're ready to talk. I was grateful for that. She gave me her couch and a soft blanket. Said, "Stay as long as you need." I remember lying there that first night, staring at the ceiling fan. The silence was loud, but for the first time in years, it didn't scare me. Back at the house, Jacob posted a video. I didn't watch it, but June showed me a screenshot. He was standing in my kitchen, drinking coffee from a mug that said, "Boss Energy." The caption read, "Cut out toxic people, even if they gave birth to you. Level up." And just like that, I was gone. Erased. No thank you. No mention of the years. Not even a goodbye. I didn't cry. I thought I would, but I didn't. Instead, I made a new bank account. I printed copies of the loan notice. I froze every old card. I started protecting myself. Finally. Jacob didn't notice, of course. He was too busy live streaming about abundance and financial freedom, too busy dancing around in the apartment I paid for, calling it his empire. But behind the camera, the fridge was empty. The bills were stacking up. I knew because I used to handle every one of them. The light bill, the Wi-Fi, the rent. He never even knew they came in pink envelopes before the shut-off notice. And now, they were all in his name. Every overdue slip, every missed payment. He'd wanted control. And now, he had it. All of it. People think leaving means slamming the door, screaming, throwing plates. But sometimes, leaving looks like this. Quiet steps. A closed bank account. A number blocked. A mother disappearing, not because she's defeated, but because she's finally done begging to be seen. I didn't run. I released. And Jacob? He had no idea. The collapse had already begun. It happened on a Tuesday. I was folding flyers at the bookstore. Nothing special, just a part-time gig helping out with the monthly newsletter. That's when my phone buzzed. A message from an old friend I hadn't spoken to in years. "Hey, saw something weird? Is it true you're sick? Jacob said you've been hospitalized. Just checking." I stared at the screen for a long moment. Sick? Hospitalized? He was using me. Again. This time, not for money, but for sympathy. That was the moment I felt it. Something sharp and final break inside me. Not a dramatic snap. More like the last thread on a rope finally giving out. I went home, opened the storage box I'd hidden in June's spare closet, and pulled out the file folder I'd quietly built over the last 2 months. Loan statements, email screenshots, screenshots of his texts, his bank charges, even the post he made calling me dead weight. I'd been collecting them, not to punish him, but because some part of me still hoped he'd wake up and ask for help. And when he did, I wanted to be ready to show him everything. To say, "This is what you've done. This is what you made me." But now, I didn't want to show him anything, because he wouldn't care. Not really. Not unless it made him look good on camera. I sat on the edge of the bed and whispered something I never thought I'd say out loud. He's gone. Not dead. Just gone. The boy I raised. The son who used to leave me sticky notes on the fridge that said, "I love you, Mom." That boy was nowhere in the man behind those sunglasses, ring lights, and fake confidence. I didn't cry. I didn't grieve. I just let go. And I realized then, I wasn't waiting for an apology anymore. I wasn't holding space for his redemption arc. I wasn't keeping the door open, just in case. Jacob had made his choice. He chose ego over family, image over truth. And I was done being a background character in a story that erased me. That was the day I stopped calling myself a mother first, and remembered I was a person too. Starting over at 68 wasn't part of my plan, but then again, neither was surviving my own child's betrayal. At first, it was small things. I bought a used bicycle for $40 off Facebook Marketplace. I rode it to the little bookstore that gave me a few hours a week to shelve new arrivals and straighten displays. The manager, Lydia, was in her 30s. Sweet, sharp, and funny without even trying. She said, "You're fast, Rose. Want more hours next month?" I smiled and nodded. My hands were tired, but my spirit felt awake for the first time in years. June offered her spare room permanently, but I told her no. I found a tiny one-bedroom above a flower shop. No elevator, thin walls. But it was mine. The first night I moved in, I sat on the floor eating soup from a paper bowl and realized I wasn't scared. I wasn't waiting for a knock. I wasn't bracing for an argument. It was quiet. Not lonely, just quiet. Peaceful. Some people talk about freedom like it's loud and wild, but the best kind? It's soft. It's waking up and making coffee in a kitchen no one yells in. It's picking out a lavender-scented dish soap just because you like it. The bookstore had a little birthday gathering for me. Nothing big. Cupcakes, tea, a card signed by every employee. One of them handed me a mug that said, "Survivor." I almost laughed. Not because it was wrong, but because it was perfectly, painfully true. Jacob never called. Not once. But I didn't check for his name anymore. I didn't scroll. I didn't wonder. One day, I cleaned out my purse and found an old wallet photo of him. Age 6, missing a front tooth, smiling like the world was still whole. I looked at it for a long while. Then I slid it into a drawer, shut it gently, and whispered, "I hope you find yourself someday, but you'll have to do it without me." No announcement, no forgiveness speech, just a quiet return to the woman I'd forgotten I was. And maybe that's the part they never tell you. Healing doesn't always look like closure. Sometimes it looks like choosing silence and staying there. It was a Sunday evening when he showed up. I saw him through the peephole, hood pulled low, shoulders slumped, like a kid who forgot how to stand tall. Jacob. I didn't open the door. He didn't knock right away. He just stood there, then paced, then sat. He stayed for hours. From behind the curtains, I watched. Not with hate, not even anger, just caution. Because love without boundaries isn't love. It's survival disguised as sacrifice. And I wasn't surviving anymore. I was living. When he finally knocked, it was soft, hesitant, like a man who wasn't sure he deserved to be heard. He said one word, barely above a whisper. "Mom?" I didn't move. He waited, for minutes, maybe longer. Then he leaned his head against the door and sighed. I knew that sound, not the sigh itself, but the weight behind it, the collapse, the reckoning. I'd heard it in my own body the night I left him behind. Still, I didn't open. The porch light was on. He could see I was home. The shadows inside flickered across the walls. I made sure he saw it all. A quiet life. A table set for one. Music playing low. A woman who had built peace without him. That was the real punishment. Not yelling, not revenge, just the undeniable truth that I didn't need him anymore, and maybe never should have. Eventually, he fell asleep on the porch steps. The next morning, I opened the door. Not because I forgave him, but because he was still there. And for the first time, he looked small, real, human. He stood slowly, said nothing. I handed him a glass of water and said, "You have 30 days, no lies, no laziness, and no next time. You start over from the bottom, just like I did." He nodded, not in entitlement, but in understanding. And that was enough, for now. We didn't hug. I didn't call him baby, but I let him in. Not into my heart, not yet, just into the hallway. Because forgiveness, real forgiveness, isn't free. It's earned in silence, in showing up, in staying. If you've ever had to rebuild yourself after someone you raised broke your heart, tell me in the comments. What was the moment you knew you were done begging to be loved? Because sometimes, the moment you stop asking to be seen is the moment the world finally sees you.